Trade, of course, has been a huge topic for this Trump administration, including the imposition of tariffs. A little later in the program, we're going to talk about the so-called trade deal that appears to be in the works with China and a 90-day rollback on those tariffs announced this morning. That's huge. But yesterday, before that announcement, Howard Lutnick, he's the Commerce Secretary, and some call him the architect of Trump's tariff strategy, he appeared with Dana Bash on CNN. And Dana, of course, wanted to ask some thoughtful, intelligent questions to better inform, educate, and illuminate her audience. And they... I'm kidding. I'm sorry. Of course, that's not what she wanted to do. She wanted to pick a fight with Howard Lutnick. She wanted to debate him. She wanted to box him in and get him in trouble with Trump, or get him in trouble with the Republicans, or get him in trouble with Wall Street, or just create some sort of controversy and fight. And that's what Dana Bash and all of these blow-dried teleprompter readers do. They don't interview. They don't educate. They don't try to enlighten their audience and get them better informed by the end of the interview. They want to give them some sort of wrestling match or something. Well, Howard Lutnick is a New Yorker. He's seen it all, and he was ready for the fight. I want to give a quick thanks to Vigilant Fox on X for collating these videos. They're fantastic, and we're utilizing them in this segment.
America has a $1.2 trillion trade deficit. That means other people are selling us goods that more than we are selling them. And that's just not balanced. It's not fair. We're losing $1.2 trillion a year, of which directly and indirectly to China, that's about $1 trillion. You know, China sells goods to Vietnam. Vietnam repackages them and sells them to us. So the idea is the president wants balanced and fair trade, and tariffs are the tool to create balanced and fair trade. It's just unsustainable for $1.2 trillion to be exported to the rest of the world, meaning our money is going to the rest of the world. It's building them up. And over time, it's taken us down, and the president's here to fix it. So that's what he's trying to do with his tariffs.
All right. Now, a couple of things here. First of all, these tariffs aren't just about the trade imbalance and the trade deficit that we have with so many other countries. That is a big part of it. But that's really just a symptom of the overall problem. And the problem is that other countries are using unfair practices to box us out. The reason we have that trade deficit isn't because everyone else is so great at manufacturing stuff. The reason that we have the trade deficit is, number one, these countries bar our products from being sold in their country, while we, with open arms, say, yeah, absolutely, give us whatever you want us to buy. We'll buy it. That's number one. Number two, oftentimes these countries are using practices like cheap labor and curbing environmental standards that the rest of us all have to live by and adhere to, that allows them to be able to manufacture things so much cheaper. They're also imposing taxes and tariffs on products when they are making their way into their markets. So part of the problem is this trade deficit, but the real problem is the financial burdens that are being put on it. They keep that. If everything were open and everything free, I have no doubt that other countries would buy American products. And by the way, that would also encourage more American manufacturing, because ultimately it's always going to be cheaper to manufacture things here in America rather than deal with overseas, if we're shipping them overseas in the long run too, if everything were fair and balanced. So Dana Bash just hears that. And well, she decided she wanted to argue with Lutnick.
We have 25% tariffs that were set under President Trump's first term. I don't hear a single word, not a single word about those tariffs. No consumers in America, those were set in 2017 and 2018. No consumers in America sit here complaining about those tariffs.
Well, prices have gone up for lots of reasons.
Oh, no. Don't talk about the Biden inflation. That's another whole gig. When President Trump in 2019 had the lowest inflation in history. So you know that this works really, really well. It works well. These countries and the businesses have to compete. Yep. They have to cut prices. You've seen it.
All right, now I want to watch this again because I want you to keep an eye on Dana Bash's face when she tries to engage here, push back. Well, prices have gone up. And Lutnick's like, yeah, prices went up under Biden. Please, I don't remember you interviewing anybody from the Biden administration about how prices have gone up. And if any prices are up right now, it's not because of the first 100 days of this presidency or last month's tariff announcement. Nobody's looking at higher prices right now because of tariffs. That hasn't even been enacted long enough for it to affect any prices for things. And if you're buying anything that's affected by tariffs, you're buying stuff that's already been imported and sitting on the shelves right now in inventory, not anything that's coming from China. And she's so out of her depth here. Watch how uncomfortable she gets when she realizes she stepped in it. And then she immediately wants to change the subject, which they always do. These reporters, I'm so sick of it, but you see it all the time. Somebody from the Trump administration will say something, and then they'll try to fact check it, but then do a 180 pivot to the next question. They're like, it's like a take that with you. And now we're going to move on to another topic. So they want to have the last word and then immediately move on. It's like this compound question and answer where the person from the Trump administration will say something, and then the journalist, reporter, the teleprompter reader like Dana Bash, they'll say, well, actually, the sky isn't blue and the grass isn't green, and we have studies to prove that. Now let's move on to another topic. Trying to keep like the last word is, they just lied to you. Now we're going to ask you another question. But most of the Trump people are great at this. Most of them say, no. That's actually not true. I'm not going to let you get away with that. Most of them are pretty good at that. So watch Dana here. Keep your eye on her when she interjects with her nonsensical, prices have gone up quite a bit. And then watch how uncomfortable she gets when I'm guessing the producer is trying to tell her in her ear, move on, change the subject. You look like a moron.
Consumers in America sit here complaining about those tariffs.
Well, prices have gone up for lots of reasons.
Oh, no. Don't talk about the Biden inflation. That's another whole gig. When President Trump in 2019 had the lowest inflation in history. So
let me ask.
That this works really, really well. It works well. These countries and the businesses have to compete. Yeah. They have to cut prices. You've seen it.
That's fantastic. She's fantastic. You saw her face change when Lutnick said, no, any prices that come up is because we had the highest inflation in history and the failed president. And you saw her face just go dark and dark. And she kept trying to say, well, let me ask, in other words, let me ask another question. Let me change the subject. I screwed up there. And it didn't go any better for Dana Bash. She continued with this approach.
As you know, the cost of tariffs are paid by American consumers. We've been talking about this. So should Americans be prepared?
Yeah, that's again, this is another trick that they do. As you know, so they're trying to establish a fact without it being debatable. I mean, it is debatable that the cost of tariffs end up in the American. I mean, listen, I guess you can say that every cost ends up being paid for by the American consumer one way or the other, I suppose, because when we buy something, ultimately that money goes to the business and the business has to use that money to pay whatever their costs are, including tariffs. Sure. But hold on a minute. Whenever Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden, whenever they want to raise corporate taxes, do you ever hear Dana Bash say, well, as you know, corporate taxes are paid for by the American consumer? Do you ever hear that? No, but of course it's true. If you raise taxes on a corporation, who pays those taxes? Whoever's buying the product that the corporation is selling. And so obviously, if they want to maintain the same kind of profit margins, if taxes go up, then their prices have to go up to accommodate the extra cost of taxes. So a tax on a corporation ultimately ends up being a tax on the American consumer. That's much more direct than a tariff cost is, actually. And so do you ever hear Dana Bash or Jake Tapper or George Stephanopoulos ever interview a Democrat who wants to raise corporate taxes and hear them say, well, as you know, the American consumer ends up paying corporate taxes? Never. You never hear that. You never hear that. But here's Dana Bash trying to establish this fact without having it be debated, which is always a trick that they like to do.
As you know, the cost of tariffs are paid by American consumers. We've been talking about this. So should Americans be prepared?
I disagree with that,
Well, okay. But most economists, I would say, disagree with you on.
I'm sorry, what now? I just, you see, people criticize me. It's like I'm being dismissive of people's intelligence because I refer to them as teleprompter readers. That truly is their primary skill. And I can't deny they all have very nice haircuts. That's one thing they have in common. They have great hair. And they're good at reading teleprompters. And the reason I call them that is because they have become so locked in to this mode of journalism where they read what's on the teleprompter and then they conduct an interview in a way where they sort of anticipate what the answer might be and they've scripted along exactly what their reply is going to be. And the second they're challenged, the second any of their priors are being challenged or any of their presuppositions are challenged and pushed back on, they lose it. They don't know what to do. That's what was this? He says, well, as you know, the American consumer pays tariffs. Well, I disagree with that. And then she says, well, most many economists. What is a most many economist? But she's lost without her teleprompter if she actually has to engage in a conversation on the issues, which is fine. Listen, if her job is to report the news and interview people, then just do that. Read your teleprompter, ask questions, get the answers, and you've done your job. But see, Dana here, she doesn't think that's her job. She thinks her job is to make Lutnick look bad. She thinks her job is to own Lutnick. She thinks her job is to debate and win the debate with Lutnick. And so I'm sorry, dear. You're the one who decided to engage in this game. And then when you start to look out of your depth, well, we're going to make fun of you because many economists would do that too.
Being passed off time and time again to the American consumer. But regardless of that, just on the policy, this is what I want to ask you about. Is the 10% tariff that we're seeing in the framework for the UK going to be in place for the foreseeable future?
So we do expect a 10% baseline tariff to be in place for the foreseeable future, but don't buy the silly arguments that the U.S. consumer pays. Businesses, their job is to try to sell to the American consumer, and domestically produced products are not going to have that tariff. So the foreigners
who's going to eat the tariffs?
Finally have to compete. They're going to have to compete. What happens is the businesses and the countries primarily eat the tariff.
As you know.
Okay, so and I think what he's trying to get across here, and I'm not going to speak for Howard Lutnick, he can speak for himself, because yes, obviously, if you buy a product that was manufactured in the United Kingdom and you got to have that British product, Boddington's beer or something, who knows, there's going to be a 10% tariff on it. And unless the retail store that you're utilizing decided to eat the tariff themselves to be competitive as a special or whatever, yeah, you'll probably pay that tariff. But what Lutnick is saying is, all right, the American people have a choice. And yes, that 10% tariff may make something more expensive. And if the consumer absolutely has to have that product made in England, then yeah, you're going to pay a little bit of a premium for that. But ideally, American manufacturers will actually make the same product or a similar product here in the US, and it won't have a tariff. So the American product will be more competitively priced. And that company that sells you the product for less than the British product will actually prosper, be able to make more, sell more, hire more people, and that grows the economy. That's the point, right? Or even better, you like your Boddingtons, you like your Guinness. I don't know why I can only think of beer is something that I'm going to buy from England. I mean, fish and chips will go bad by the time it gets here. What else do they make, right? So let's say you have to have your Guinness or your Boddingtons. Well, if the UK, the brewers there, decide that this is a ripe market for their product and they don't want to deal with the tariff, they'll open up a factory, a brewery right here, right in Milwaukee to compete with their beer or something. That's the idea. And Dana Bash just doesn't get it because, well, she's Dana Bash.
You saw the rates that were published on Liberation Day. Those countries can take those rates down if they open their markets to Americans to export. Let Americans get their stuff on these foreign governments and foreign consumers' shelves, and we'll be better as a country. I think what's happened is we just have never felt the fairness of our ability to export. Finally, the President of the United States is on our side. And that's what you're going to see in the UK, and then country after country. We're going to announce, like we did with the UK, how many tens of billions of dollars of new opportunity the president is negotiating for American small businesses and medium-sized businesses to sell their products overseas. That's the golden age that's coming, and everybody else is going to build in America to get around that tariff. Remember, there's no tariff if you build it in America.
He's not the architect of the tariff policy. Trump is, but he is the cheerleader for the tariff policy, that's for sure. And there's no better proponent for it. Whether it all works out the way that Lutnick thinks it's going to work out is yet to be seen. One thing is for certain, though. If you sold your stocks the day after the dip on Wall Street after the tariffs were first announced, you're screwed today. Because 1 month later, 6 weeks later, we've got a negotiated deal with the UK. We've got a framework for a deal with China, and the markets are exploding. Now, that's not the ultimate measure of the economy, but for the last month, I've been hearing people say that Trump ruined the economy. And if that's the case, and they're measuring it based on how Wall Street responds, well, he didn't ruin it for very long. And most of the people who are commenting on this are kind of out of their depth because all they know is talking points to try to beat Trump up with. And it doesn't go any deeper than that. It is a complex issue, absolutely. One thing, though, you see from the talking heads like Dana Bash, which is consistent, is that they don't know how to deal with a president who is trying to look out for the best interests of the American worker, manufacturer, business owner, and consumer all at the same time. For the last 25 or 30 years, it's just been one thing. We want the American people to be able to buy things as cheap as possible. We've had that. It's true. But that also means that when we have a pandemic and a lockdown, we can't manufacture anything here. If we have to go to war, God forbid, we won't be able to manufacture half of the things that we need right here. We won't be able to source it. We won't be able to resource it. And also, we're beholden to one country who not only holds a chunk of our debt, a huge chunk of our debt, but they're also building up a war machine that is designed specifically to go to war with us. That's a recipe for disaster, and Trump's the first one to actually do something about it. And I think every reasonable person recognizes something has to be done, and no one else has any better ideas, and they don't know what to do with that. The weird thing, though, is when they comment on the way the economy is right now and manufacturing and pricing and all of that stuff, they act like this has always been this way, that there's no way that anything could ever change, that this is just the way our economy and our manufacturing setup has been forever. And it hasn't. It's been 25 years. That's all. That's not even a quarter of the time this country's been around. There was a time when we made stuff. There was a time when we straddled the planet as the king of manufacturing and the king of consuming those things that we manufacture. It's a very relatively short time in our world history that we've had this paradigm that we're in right now. And anyone who looks at it reasonably knows it's unsustainable. And we finally have a president who's trying to fix it.